let me tell you about our guest speaker tonight. When you think of modern media, certain terms come to mind: digital, social, interactive, immediate, and of course, mobile. Right now, mobile is where it's at. Everybody has a smartphone or a tablet, and a very large and growing number of people are using their mobile device for everything, from reading the news, to sharing videos, from deciding where to eat dinner, to finding the restaurant, to deciding what car to buy to drive them to the restaurant. When you think of modern media, you also think of Google, the search engine giant that has revolutionized the way people look for stuff to read, share, and buy. Tonight's keynote speaker brings these worlds together. Search engine meets mobile meets today's consumers. Elliott, who, by the way, teaches our mobile marketing course, is the former head of mobile sales and strategy for Google North America. After joining the company in 2009, he helped grow Google Mobile into a billion-dollar business and make it the largest mobile search, display, and video network in the world. Prior to joining Google, Elliott worked for many years in media and advertising, including a job at the global IMC firm OMD, where he helped start their emerging technology mobile team. In his latest role as head of media solutions tech, he develops marketing solutions for clients that span platforms and devices, but especially mobile. And he has sold mobile marketing to the majority of blue chip advertisers in the United States. Now, here's some fun facts about Elliott. He is a father of 3 girls, all under the age of 8. Does he sleep? And I also want to say girl power. It humbles you, right? He just recently he stopped doing this, but he used to be a volunteer ambulance driver, which again is fascinating, and I'd like to know more. But when does he sleep? And his first job after college was as Paige at NBC 30 Rock. So this is Kenneth in real life, right? He wore the blue blazer, you said, and the peacock tie. Yes, so I can imagine that's where you develop some of your sales skills, your ability to talk to people.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And the other thing you should know is tonight is Elliott's 11th anniversary. So what can you say? This is a guy. We've been trying to get you for years, and you came on your anniversary. Truly, this is amazing. So we are so fortunate to have you here tonight. Welcome, Elliott.
Is that working? Thumbs up from Bob. Bob, everybody in the back. I don't think anyone thanked Bob, but Bob set this all up. So yeah, that's. Thank you for clapping. I haven't done anything yet, so we'll see. I don't think I deserve it. We'll see what happens. I don't sleep in my house. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of dealing with things. And I used to joke when I would do talks that I became the mayor of my house in Foursquare just so I could say I was in charge of something, which is true as well. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Dean Reed, thank you very much. Chad, Rick, Nicole, especially for setting everything up. Thank you. I am here today as a proud faculty member of the IMC program. It's been a really rewarding experience for me. Both my parents, this is actually my interview with Chad and Rick, both my parents were teachers. My mom was at PS 140 in New York City. She taught special ed. My dad was in the Peace Corps. He taught, he's actually teaching now at Pepperdine. So it's been kind of a passion of mine. So when I was interviewing with Chad and Rick, I said, I'd really love to get in it. I don't know how good I'm going to be, but I'd really love to be part of it. Can you help me along? And it's been a really rewarding experience for me, and being part of this whole program is something I'm very thankful for. So thank you very much, and I'm excited for the new vision. So I'm here today, and I was given the task of talking about innovation as it relates to marketing, and I was also told that I had to be entertaining because I was basically the end of 2 days. So that's a pretty broad topic purview and a very hard thing to do. I've already made you laugh a couple times, so I feel a little bit better. But we'll see what happens along the way. But I am going to talk a little bit about how technology and innovation actually happens, I'll give you a little bit of Google flavor of how Google actually tackles innovation and how we reward people and get people to innovate. And I'll also talk a little bit about how the consumer journey has been affected by technological changes, by innovation. And hopefully I deliver on the promise of telling you guys something, at least one thing you guys didn't know before you walked in this room today. So we'll see if that happens. So let's jump in. I want to talk a little bit about Roger Bannister. Do you guys know, nod of heads, Roger Bannister? Maybe 40% of the room, 50% of the room. You're cheating, you know him. So he British. He, on May 6th of 1954, broke the 4-minute mile record that was previously never done before. No one had ever done it up until 1954. He basically was told by medical experts it was not possible. Coaches, trainers, everyone told him it couldn't be done. He spent a lot of his time visualizing breaking the 4-minute barrier. He didn't train especially hard, he admits later on in his biography. He became a very famous neurosurgeon. What's really interesting about Roger Bannister's record is that 46 days later, someone broke his record. And why did that happen? Funny, right? So did people's bodies change in 46 days? Did the ability of people physically to do it? No. What changed was the fact that someone had did it and it became possible. And that's really fundamentally how innovation happens. Innovation is only limited by your current constraints, your current perspective of what can't be done. And when you're constrained, you'll never be able to innovate. Actually, there was you can get really deep into the Roger Bannister story, as I started to do. But basically, the guy that broke his record 46 days later was this guy named John Landy from Australia. And they ran something called the Miracle Mile. And at the end of the race, John Landy was leading basically all the way through. And for the last half mile, he basically looked over his left shoulder to see where Roger Bannister was. And Roger Bannister passed him on the right side and never looked back. You can get pretty deep on what that means and everything else, but we're not going to go there. But what's really fascinating is not only did we innovate back in 1954, but James the Beast Nielsen actually broke the beer mile in April 27th, 2014 of this year. What is the beer mile? I'm not going to skip to the video. But what the beer mile is basically you drink a beer, run a lap, drink a beer, run a lap, drink it. It's awful. I watched it. You look it up later. It's actually pretty fascinating that you physically can do that. So you know, who knows? Maybe his record will get broken just like Roger Bannister's, making him proud. But again, you know, the point being is that something's only possible if you think it can be done. So what does that mean for us? How have things changed when it comes to media? How have we broken barriers that we thought weren't previously breakable? Right now, and this is an eMarketer study, this is basically 2010, what the landscape looked like from media spent. On an average daily basis, how many hours of time people were spending with media. So back in 2010, television was about 4 hours and 24 minutes a day. Digital was roughly 3 hours and 11 minutes across all screens. When you actually look what that looks like today, you can see the growth in digital. Just 3 years later, we're now spending roughly 5 hours and 16 minutes with digital devices, about an hour more or less than television. And it's pretty striking because that is a change fundamentally in behavior. Now granted, the digital bar there is basically all devices, but when you look at what's driving that growth, back to your point, Dean Reed, it's mobile. Mobile, when you look at how much time people are spending with mobile, it's pretty striking. It's, 2013, the average number of minutes was about 141 minutes a day. I don't know if anyone has their mobile device or they're looking at it now under the table or anything else. It happens. We do it, right? Yeah, it's fine. You do it. This is the mobile presentation. This is the time to do it. Your mobile devices are never more, this is on average, about 8 feet from your body at any given moment, even when you're sleeping. Some people check their phone. It's the first thing they do even before they get out of bed. Raising your hand. Yeah, this is a safe place. We can all admit it. It's all right. It's true. It's true. We do it, and it's only happening more. But what's really interesting when you look back at where mobile started, this is Kurt Cobain in the 90s, right? Great picture. I found this picture. I was like, it's going in. I'll make up a story. I actually did have a version of that phone way back when. But, even Kurt Cobain can't make that phone look cool, right? That was our vision of what was revolutionary. But then, June of 2007 happens, and all of a sudden, you have innovation. You have someone a company, a visionary, that basically took the internet and made it accessible, made it beautiful, and put it in your pocket. And that was something that wasn't possible. When you look back at Kurt Cobain, this was the future, right? This is what mobile devices were. Some even had the army pack next to it, or in the car, or whatever it was. Raising this again, safe place. Thank you for admitting that. So these devices are really, really important. Yeah. Sorry. This is my wedding anniversary, right? I'm here. No, I'm kidding. We're all good. We're all good. So what the iPhone did, not only did it innovate and put a device, the internet, in people's pockets, what it did and what it's doing to your kids, what it's doing to the expectation of information being accessible, customizable, always on, is almost scary. My kids have no idea how I grew up. They will have no idea. It's actually, and this is something I will go to the video for. This is a really interesting video. I've watched it many times. I'm probably adding to the view count of it. This is, by the way, James the Beast Nielsen. I don't think you can see him. But this is a video of a baby. Are we good? Baby with an iPad. Knows exactly how to do it, flipping through. Given a magazine, watch a baby's hand. It's trying to swipe. Isn't that crazy? That's unbelievable to me. This, again, trying to swipe. It doesn't understand a magazine. Think about that. That means that baby will grow up thinking that it can touch and affect information in real time, and it's always ready. And again, it's customizable. That's nothing like any of us grew up with. I got email in college, right? So it's a very different world. And how people consume media, the way people consume media, that trend of digital time will only go up. Television, what we think of television today is going to change, and that's going to affect us in real time. As an example, this is Harper. This is my 8-year-old now. Thank you. It's totally gratuitous. I'm just buying you in with shots of my children. This is blatant pandering. So story. My 8-year-old daughter said, I want to go to Mom's house, and I said, Mom lives in Pennsylvania. We don't have time to go. I can't drive you. And she said, well, that's okay. I can get there myself. And I said, no, you don't even know how to get there. And she said, I do. She said, give me your phone. So she took my phone. She opened Google Maps, and she had me put in the address for Mom. And she didn't stop there. Then I said, well, yeah, but look, how are you possibly going to get there, Harper? And she said, well, actually, they have a bike function, so I can just jump on my bike and go there. And I said, and this is a real turning point for me, because I worked at Google, and this is Google Maps, and I didn't know that existed. So at that moment, that realization that I just that fed you was basically a personal experience of mine. Harper has a vast knowledge of how technology can work for her in a much different way than what I grew up with, and it's scary. When you actually look at the number of smartphones activated every day, there are 3x more smartphones activated every day than there are babies being born. There are more phones out there than actual people, well, almost, which is kind of scary. How many people in this room have 2 devices? Raise your hand. I'm one of them. Yeah, that's a lot of people with 2 devices. That's amazing. And that's partly the reason why there's so many smartphones. Speaking of babies, there's actually an app now. This is just a fun fact thing that I was late night, whatever, I threw it in. But basically, there's now a trackable app. So it basically reads the vital signs through a booty of your baby and will tell you heart rate, if it's sweating and hot, a bunch of different things. It's like $200 for a baby suit. And it's a brave new world, right? So this is innovation of a certain type, innovation in solving a problem of people wanting to know more about their babies, feeling like they're in touch with them, which is totally admirable. The other cheap pandering, my wife said if I put a shirtless picture of David Beckham in a presentation, people would like it and pay attention more, so I did it. but I put this in there for his tattoos, not his body. But actually, Nokia filed a patent for something called the haptic feedback tattoo. And what essentially it is, it's magnetized ink that you could either put in your body and put on a sticker on your body. And when you get a text message, your skin could vibrate. True. And it could vibrate in different ways if you get a voicemail versus a text message. So imagine, you could customize it to people. Creepy? I don't know. I throw it out there as the next stage of innovation. Again, I'm challenging all of your preconceived notions of what's possible and what's acceptable. Is this acceptable? It might be one day. So, how do you get there? How do you get to a point where you create a tattoo that vibrates your skin? How, as a company, do you invest resources, time, money to actually do something like that? What you have to do is you have to have a culture of failure, and you have to reward failure, and you have to celebrate it. Myself included, show of hands, if you've ever been at work or any point during your career, if you've limited yourself and not said something that was scary, that could possibly jeopardize your job, that was something that just wasn't status quo at your company, wherever you are. I'm going to raise my hand. Right. Right. This is bad. This is bad. This is not how companies should operate. It prevents challenging your preconceived notions of what's possible. Roger Bannister wouldn't have happened in an environment where we all work every day. And that is bad. Quick story about that. This is a monkey and this is a banana. There was a scientist that had 5 monkeys in a cage. And what he decided to do was he put a banana on top of the cage. And he opened the cage door and he let any monkey they wanted climb out of the cage and come get the banana. So one of the monkeys did. All the monkeys were going crazy, climbs up, grabs a banana, and what he did to the other monkeys, and this happened, it was not me, he actually took a bucket of water and poured it on the other monkeys that were in the cage. So the next day, he opened the cage door, and the monkey came out, went up on top of the cage. All the monkeys were kind of telling him to come back. And he poured water on the monkeys. So the third day, he opens the door, and one monkey goes to the door, and all the monkeys claw the other monkey back. Do not go and get the banana, basically. And it happens for a couple days, and he's realizing that he's training the monkeys to not go get the banana. So he decides that he's going to introduce 5 new monkeys. So one a day for the next 5 days, he introduces a monkey to the cage, he opens the door, he puts a banana on top of the cage. And the new monkey goes to get the banana. All the monkeys claw the monkey back, so the monkey doesn't go get the banana. This happens 5 days consecutively. No monkeys go to get the banana. They're scared of getting water poured on them. And it was an interesting experiment, not only because he had trained monkeys not to go get rewarded, but the 5 new monkeys didn't know why they weren't getting the banana. And that's really important, because it means that you're training people to prevent other people from being innovative. And that's the culture that we live in. So if you have a company corporate culture that teaches you as people to be the monkeys in the cage, you're never going to be part of innovation. And that's a problem. So what does that mean? So I'll give you the Google flavor of this. At Google, we have a section of the company headed up by Sergey Brin, who's one of the founders. And the group is called Google X. And the X is basically taking problems and 10xing them with a solution and doing it within the timeline of roughly 10 years. It's where Google Glass came from. It's where a couple other projects that I'll talk about came from. And what they do is they reward failure. So what they do fundamentally to try and decide what they call, to focus on what they call moonshots, are basically, let's identify a problem that's solvable that fits into our 10x solution. And identifying a real problem that's that scalable is actually harder than you think. Because there are ideas, I think I read there was a frictionless surface that allowed things to hover. There were a couple other cool things that were proposed to this group at one point, and they turned them down because it doesn't actually solve a large-scale problem. And identifying the problem is the first key piece of innovation, and then trying to poke holes in it along the way as much as possible so it fails is rewarded. And that allows people to think outside of the box and to be okay with failure. And that's really important. Again, that's where Google Glass came from. The solution that Google Glass solves is basically when you pull out your smartphone, you hide it under the table, or maybe now you put it above the table because I've given you permission to do it. You're looking down at the screen. You're disassociating yourself from the rest of us, right? You're not paying attention anymore, and you're nodding. You're cheating, though, because you know. Yeah, totally non-intentional. What that means is that mobile, as great as it is, it's actually disconnecting you from the real world, and it's not allowing you to live your life as well as it could. So if you take that as a problem, and that is a problem, Google Glass actually solves that, right? Because now you're looking at me, you could also be recording me, you could also be taking pictures of me, you could also check the time if you needed to go somewhere, you could check your thank you for turning it on. So you can do it with a head gesture. I saw the light. But that's a real problem, and you can speak to failure along the way. We haven't done it perfectly, but the whole point of the project is basically to find the flaws, fix them if you can, and if not, you kill the project. But that's okay. You reward people for doing that for innovation. My favorite app, by the way, and we were talking about this, Google Glass can actually go out in the golf course and tell you the distance to the hole and a bunch of other, weather. It can basically guide. It allows you to be more active and explore the real world. It can translate euros if you're traveling. You can take pictures of the Eiffel Tower. There are all these great videos on YouTube I encourage you to watch. But again, the innovation happens from identifying a problem and coming up with a solution and poking holes along the way. The driverless cars, I'm sure you guys have read about that. That's another Google X problem. I was in one. I didn't truly drive it. I could tell you guys I'd driven it, but I didn't. But it is still pretty impressive because that thing on top actually scans and detects things around the car, and it actually is pretty impressive, the science behind it. But the way Google decided to do these driverless cars wasn't just because they thought it was cool. Every year, 1.2 million people die worldwide in traffic-related accidents, and over 90% of those are human-related and due to human error. So that's a real problem. How can you address that problem, save lives, and do it in a way that not only solves an existing problem, but gives access to driving that previously wasn't available to the blind? How do you solve and create solutions that are big scale? Do it in 10 years. They've logged thousands of hours and miles testing this, but then they just recently, this is Monday, so I had to revise my presentation a bunch of times. But Monday, they decided that they were going to take the steering wheel and both pedals out of the car as well. So basically, these cars are actually the prototype, and they're limited to 25 miles per hour. But basically, how do you innovate upon innovation and put a solution in front of people? And I'm willing to get in the car, but how do you put a solution in front of people that actually will solve a problem? Google Lens, that's another project. I don't know if you guys heard about this. Some of you have, yeah. So basically, the International Diabetes Foundation basically said they're losing the war against diabetes, and one of the issues is testing glucose levels and getting ahead of where you are. So this is actually a microchip that sits between two soft contact layers, and can actually take a reading. They're trying to get it to take it every second, but a reading of your glucose levels, and it can actually they haven't solved it yet, but they're thinking maybe they'll have a little light flash if your glucose levels are low. Or they'll send a signal to your mobile phone, and you'll get a text message or an Apple Watch or something else. This is a totally bizarre idea, but it's something that is founded in a real problem, and it's an out-of-the-box challenge of preconceived notions of constraint, innovative idea. And it's pretty cool. So living in that kind of culture allows you to be freer in the way you think. So if we think about just how technology has changed our lives, look back to the last 30 or 40 years. This was what television was. This is what everyone crowds around. You watch. There's nothing else simulating in the room. And if you actually go back to the chart, so of the 5 hours and 16 minutes a day, even just online, that people spend with digital devices, 17% of all the digital time is spent watching video. And that's important because if you look at the media screen today, the TV screen, this is what people's living rooms look like. I don't know if your living rooms look like that, but mine certainly do. There's a tablet, there's a phone. I'm on my phone playing Candy Crush while we're watching Modern Family. I got yelled at. But you're going to have a totally bad perspective of my marriage after this. But this is what it is. It's 90% of all media and content interactions are screen-based, and it's multiple screens in the home. So getting to the marketing piece of this, if you're a marketer and you have all this divide and diverted attention, from your consumer that you're trying to reach with your ad message, how do you possibly think about this? How do you possibly think about all these different devices? How do I just make my creative formatted for the different screen size? I mean, there's a lot to think about when it comes to that. So I think it's worth taking a step back and just thinking about how marketing was done and how it's done today. So if you look at, they used to call it the first moment of truth. So this was basically the stimulus. You see a print ad or you see a TV ad, maybe you see a TV ad and a print ad. You decide as a consumer, oh, I need that new shade of lipstick. So I'm going to go down to my drugstore and I'm going to get to the shelf and I'm going to be presented not just with the lipstick that I saw in print and on television, but a few others on the actual shelf. That moment where you get into the store was called the first moment of truth. The first moment of truth where you actually were faced as a consumer with a decision to decide which product you were actually going to buy. That moment of truth still exists at the shelves for a lot of people. But it actually happens not just in a store anymore, but it's also online. People have their showrooming. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. Amazon rewarded 2 holiday seasons ago people going in to stores and then asking Amazon to match the price of whatever product you were looking at so you'd actually buy it on your phone, just walk out of the store. There's a whole new world as far as the first moment of truth. But what's really complicated is that there's actually something we've called the zero moment of truth. So this is actually the research phase. After you've seen the stimulus, people are doing a lot of research. They Google a lot of stuff. They Bing a lot of stuff. They do a lot of research online to try and figure out what's the right product for them. And this goes back to the baby. All my information is customizable. All my information is in real time. All of my information is up to date. It's a very different way of consumer buying that needs to be addressed. And then if you get really complicated, the conversation doesn't end after you get your first moment of truth, after your zero moment of truth. You now have a relationship. Whether you like it or not, as a marketer, you have a relationship with your customer. And that's where social media comes in. What do you want to tell people? You have the ability to bring someone back after they've already bought something the first time, the second time, the third time. So how do you create that relationship? So from a consumer perspective, what didn't I know I needed? That's the first piece. And there are a lot of companies that are developing for this, Google being one. So I'll talk about that for a second. So have you guys all seen Iron Man? Most people, it's pretty successful. I'm assuming most people. Well, you have not? Oh, only one. You boycotted the next 2. I got it. That's it. Robert Downey Jr. apologizes. Right. So in that movie, Tony Stark, the character, had a computer called Jarvis. And what Jarvis did was basically not just answer Tony Stark's questions, but it predicted what he would need, and it came up with suggestive solutions. And that's very different than just enter information, enter a search, and get a result back. Having the artificial intelligence be smarter and work faster for you is really important, and it needs to be better in all aspects, Google included. So we're working on it. But what that means, if you were to play it out, and you were able to ask a computer, computer, I'm thinking about going to Paris to apologize for coming to West Virginia for my 11th anniversary. I'm kidding. So are there direct flights available? The computer would say, yes, they are available. And not only are they available, they're available on United. And I know that you have 250,000 frequent flyer miles, so the tickets will only cost you 200. And then you say, that's great. Can you reserve them for me? Yes. And would you like me to start looking for restaurants in Paris for when you get there and make a reservation? Yes. All of that is doable. Right? It's not that far off. So Jarvis, the idea of Jarvis, actually will do a better job of not just selling people stuff and giving people stuff to buy, but actually just change their lives from being a better source of information. We're dealing with this. I don't know if any of you guys use Google now, but I do, both because of a consumer perspective and because it's the guy that pays the bills. But it's actually pretty amazing how predictive they're getting with Google Now. So if you actually go, and this is on the top left, if you're an iOS user, it's the top left corner of the search app, I believe. And if you're an Android user, it's usually a screen on your Android device. But basically, you can say, I'm a Celtics fan, I want to know about these 3 stocks, and I want to have the weather up to date, and you'll swipe over and you'll get that information. But it won't stop there. When I got to the airport and then I drove to Morgantown today, it actually gave me a bunch of locations in Morgantown I should see. It showed me a bunch of pictures just around town that it thought I would be interested in seeing. It told me a couple restaurants. I really like Indian food. It told me a couple restaurants that I might be interested based on my habits, my calendar entries. And it's a step in the direction of Jarvis. And that's really important because it means that people, consumers, will discover new things that they didn't know they needed. Just because the old world that we live in is basically entry and information back, and it's on you to figure it out. And that's really important. Next piece, I want it now. So you've told me what I didn't know I needed. Make it easy for me to get it, otherwise I'm going to get disinterested. So this is the plumbing. This is the part, the first slide had me as husband, dad, Googler, professor, geek. So this is the geek part of it. But there's a lot of plumbing that makes it possible, but it's amazing how good it actually is. So if you actually just look at SD cards, this is a storage card, right? The exact same space, 9 years later, it went from 128 megabytes to 128 gigabytes. It's the exact same space. That's amazing. What technology? TVs are getting smaller, right? Better means smaller, but bigger. Television, but this is basically the exact same finger, but the memory is so much larger. It's actually, when you compare it, it's more memory, 32 times more memory roughly than the original iMac. So you potentially have more memory in your pocket in your smartphone than the original iMac did. That's amazing. That is amazing. They're supercomputers in your pocket. What it means, on the flip side, this is good or bad, it means that always sharing, always taking the photo, always taking the video, posting it online, posting to Pinterest, posting to Twitter, whatever it is, it becomes that much more accessible. So the pipes of delivering I want it now are much wider, much faster. There's also, there's a bunch of technology, not just on memory, but also the actual servers that deliver the information. So they deliver a tremendous amount of information. I'm sure you guys have heard of the windowless, plots of land in the middle of nowhere, America, that are basically powering the internet for the U.S. It's true, and managing those systems is really, really important. The servers get hot. So there's a physical need to keep servers hot, and they consume a lot of energy. So there's actually a tremendous amount of information, and a PUE is the power usage efficiency. So if you were actually to take a lot of this information and figure out what am I spending watt-wise to deliver, the baby video to Elliott Nix in West Virginia. How hot does that make my computer? And then you can start to piece all of these different pieces of information together and figure out and predict when your servers are going to get hot and how to be more efficient with your PUEs. And if you go from a PUE of 2, meaning you spend a watt of energy on cooling the server and a watt of energy on delivering the information, to a PUE of 1, meaning you're just spending all of your energy on delivering the information, that means we just got a heck of a lot faster. And that means, again, you will never see this stuff. This may be the last time you hear about a PUE. But it means that you guys will all be able to share, be always on, do everything more. And as marketers, it means that people will get your products faster. And it means you have to design for them more. So I didn't know what I needed. I want it now. BFFs. Now, this is the post-purchase experience. You have a friend. What are you going to do with them? They've chosen to buy your products. They have expectations. We live in a world of expectations. Everyone expects customer service. Everyone expects a handheld experience. It's something that's unique to them. Really good example, Starbucks. Starbucks makes $1 billion a year in mobile transactions. They have 10 million customers, and they have 5 million, roughly, transactions in the app every day. They have a tremendous user base when it comes to app usage and customer loyalty at the point of sale, and they do it really well. And it's really important that they have it to be an easy consumer experience at the point of sale, but it's also really important that they take the data and they actually do something with it. And this is something that's not just a big company like Starbucks. This is something that anybody can do. As long as you have the analytics to track user behavior and know what they're doing with your app, knowing how they buy, you can tailor that experience pretty easily. And it's accessible to you. There are tons of analytics solutions that are free that are out there. Google Analytics. I know, plug in the products, but it's out there and it's available. And it actually really is helpful in tailoring that experience and creating that BFF. Incidentally, this is an extreme example. This is actually another one of my recent plugs. So Andrew Chafari, Starbucks actually offers a 12th drink free option as part of its loyalty program. So Andrew Chafari decided that he was going to go the extra mile and make the most expensive Starbucks drink ever made. $54.75. It had 60 shots of espresso in it. It was a 128-ounce size glass. I think they even put some bananas and whipped cream and other stuff in there. But it was a really good use of the loyalty program, and it got shared by a bunch of different media outlets, Mashable, Verge, everything else. Do you think Starbucks likes that? Loves it. And it was free, right? It was essentially free. Off of a 12th free drink that they probably already made their money on. It was a minimal cost. Incidentally, it took them 4 days to drink it. Just so you guys see, he reposted it. It had a certain amount of caffeine in it that was reportedly lethal for a human being. So, but he posted the picture because it got so much attention to actually prove. So he took the whole thing home and drank it. Anyway. Interesting story, right? But it's a good example of how you can gain a BFF and gain new customers from having a relationship post-purchase. Second example, raise your hand if you're a Starwood Preferred member, SBG. Okay. Now, of the people that raise your hand, it's about 10% of you. Raise your hand if you would stay anywhere else if you're given the choice. 2 of you. Really? So of the loyalty, they have a really strong loyalty program. And the way they innovated with the loyalty relationship was basically, we have a problem filling our hotel rooms during the week. So we have to solve for that problem. How do we design a solution and create a value proposition to consumers so that they will actually make money and fill our rooms during the week? And they decided that they were going to target business professionals that weren't traveling necessarily on their own dime, but were benefiting from the points. So they developed this amazing loyalty program that rewarded people for staying at their properties. It gave them extra points for properties last minute. It has flexible check-in times. It has free internet. It has upgrades that happen all the time. So they created this amazing system that made money for them at scale, because they created a system that made someone their BFF, and they kept it going. And they used data to customize the experience. Then they figured out, okay, now that we have this customized experience, let's really go after the mobile environment for travelers that are booking same day, looking for a hotel experience. And they've done pretty well with that. They've raised their click-through rate. They've done a bunch of by 20%. They've done a bunch of different things to get people to choose their brand, and they keep them because they have that BFF relationship. So that's essentially the full arc of the marketing picture today. And obviously it's very different, and technology and innovation play a very big role in how marketers have to think about the multi-screens and the different ways that marketers can basically touch consumers. So I'm not going to end on that slide. I'm going to talk a little bit more about innovation, but this is simple innovation. This is innovation that you will definitely take away, because these 3 things have changed my life. The first is, raise your hand if you've ever drilled a hole and put up a shelf in your house. Right. Now, raise your hand if you've dreaded the little bit of silt or whatever that is that drips down and like some of it hangs on the overhang. Right? Yes. All right. You don't have to raise your hand for that. Simple innovation. Genius. I saw it, I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing all these years? That's a problem, and it was solved with a Post-it. It's actually as soon, right? Second thing, kids, ice packs. Kids fall all the time. My kids fall all the time. There's a lot of crying. Ice packs solve the problem. You have these big blue things, or these things that sometimes aren't melted, or whatever it is. Sponge. Not only does it cool and freeze in the freezer, but it soaks up all the water at the end, so you don't have to clean anything up. Genius, right? Innovation. This is not big innovation. It's a sponge in a bag, but everyone's going, oh, it's amazing. And the last, I used to throw Nutella away. Why am I not putting ice cream in it and heating it up? It's amazing. It's amazing. No Nutella should go wasted after this meeting at all. It's a crime. It's a crime, and it was happening, but not in my house. Anyway. So those are my last 3 innovations. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it. Oh yeah, so we were going to try and do a little Q&A thing here, and I think there's a microphone. Bob nodding yes, maybe. Bob's all right. You can just shout it out, and I'll repeat the question so everyone can hear it. But if you guys had questions about marketing, innovation, let me know, and I'll try and answer. And it's okay if you don't. Yes, I'm sorry. Is Google Mac or PC? I, at work, have a Mac. It's a very secure system. I believe in the Mac computer as well as the Chromebook for different reasons. Some people have different devices depending on whether they deal with Excel or the cloud. But I think you'd find that it varies between engineering groups and sales groups. So most of the sales guys have Macs. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So mobile is now eclipsed all other forms of accessing the internet. And over the past
It's about 50-50 right now.
Over the past several years, that they were tracking when they thought that was going to happen.
The mobile moment, they used to call it.
Yes.
Right.
Is there anybody tracking when wearables will eclipse mobile?
Yeah. So the question for those of you in the back that didn't hear, but the mobile moment was the moment where there were going to be, for the search world, there were going to be more searches on mobile devices than there were going to be on desktop devices. Excuse me, for a lot of industries that did happen a couple years back. The question was about wearables, and will wearables accessing the internet surpass mobile devices or laptop devices? I think there's a lot of projections about wearables, and there's a lot of business decisions being made on the profitability of them, but if they replace the device like the smartphone or the laptop or the tablet, I think it's probably a little. There are definitely models, but I haven't seen one or heard of one that's definitely concrete for sure. Right. So I don't know. I don't have a year for the wearable moment.
You don't have a day? Come on.
No, right. I'm not that smart. I'm not. Cool. Yes. In the red. Oh, I saw you. You kind of got it up there. So I asked around about stuff I could share, stuff I couldn't, and I basically shared everything I could. So I have no comment, no POV on that.
You spoke a little bit about the ability of Google to deliver information and products sort of when a user provides you with information. So let's say you allow Google access to your calendar or your email, and then it can provide tailored recommendations. What is happening in terms of people who aren't comfortable providing that information? So I love getting tailored advertising and that sort of thing, but a lot of people don't. Is it just going to be too bad you have to get on the boat, or can you talk a little bit towards that?
It would be horrible if it was too bad to get on the boat. And that's not a good user experience. And that's not putting the user first. So I really hope that doesn't happen. So I'm going to be less Google. I'm more Elliott answering this question, so it's not official. So I actually, that's not a Google issue. That's an industry issue, and it has to do with, again, putting the user first and education. And this is actually something that's come up in the mobile marketing courses as an example for user privacy. A lot of it has to do with people don't actually know what they're sharing. I don't know. I'm assuming everyone here is on Facebook. Right? How many of you actually gone into your settings and looked exactly what you're sharing and what's being accessed? Good. Have you changed anything? Good. I mean, that's probably, how recently was that? About last 6 months, last year? But now think about where you have your email, where you have a Twitter account, where you have a Pinterest account, where you have a Target account, and you're allowing Target to use your information. I'm not picking a Target. I'm just saying there are a lot of different places where you have to do the same thing that you've done with Facebook, and not everyone thinks about that. And not everyone's password in here for their email account should be at least 16 characters long. I hope yours is. There's stuff you should know to prevent your information from being leaked that drives the concern for privacy that you're talking about. This is now Google. The user first is the mentality of the company. It's the policy. there's been a ton of trying to simplify the information, kind of the legal T's and C's, to make people feel more confident and educated on what's actually being shared. So to answer your question, I don't think take it or leave it approach is a sound one. I don't think that will win out at the end of the day. Yes? What's my recommendation? Apply. Yeah, there's a lot. Yes. So I read, this is a couple years back, but Google gets probably 250,000 resumes a year for various departments. There's a ton of different departments. It ranges obviously from Google X to sales to engineering. We have a .org wing that basically just focuses on the social efforts of Google. It has nothing to do with sales or engineering. There's a bunch of different companies within. All of them have their different requirements as far as how to get your foot in the door. Applying online helps. Having some sort of tailored resume specifically for the job that you're looking for definitely helps, because there's a whole HR recruiting department that actually looks at every resume that gets submitted. And if it's just a generic resume, it doesn't speak to the job that you're doing, and you'd be surprised of the 250 how much that actually happens. It'll get kind of looked over, because there are definitely more candidates. They're MBA candidates. They're all different for entry level jobs. There's a bunch of different people that are competing. So you have to get your foot in the door. I'm happy to submit a resume if that's what you're looking for too. I can do that too. So you can find my email in the course. So it's just making sure. I think the best advice is tailoring your resume and your cover letter to be exactly in line with the job, and to make sure that you're spinning every career position that you've ever had to be the best for that job specifically. It's not like any other job that you'd apply for.
Well, when it comes to the non-user of any technology in general, how do you personally in your endeavors, how do you approach bringing people on board who are unfamiliar and interested in any way? Because is it a passive approach? Do you just fully expect everybody to come on board eventually, or do you take an active approach to try to gain users?
Users, and just to clarify, when you say bring people on board,
technology or buying into anything that you're interested in.
It comes back to the philosophy of putting the user first, going back to the privacy question. If you put the user first, you make it accessible, you're transparent in what you're doing. You tell people what's an ad and what's not. When you go to Google, you know where the ads are when you search. That's on purpose. You should know where the ads are. You shouldn't have the term paid inclusion. So basically a result that's in search that you don't know is an ad. So you're basically being manipulated. Things like that put the user first, and that usually makes adoption easy, and then you customize that experience. You make it better constantly. You innovate constantly. So there's definitely going to be education from a product perspective and a usage perspective, but if you stick to your philosophy and develop products that have a user experience that's pretty beneficial to them, the adoption happens. That's been the kind of philosophy all the way. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
How does Google handle the Apple's next big thing secrecy marketing tactics? How does the company go about anticipating what's coming? Because they do put things out to developers and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to. I'm going to put the Elliott hat on so I don't get in trouble. I think it's not so much. Competition is great. Apple, Google, Facebook, it's great. The reason why it's great, it makes my job tougher as a sales guy. But it's good because it puts the user first, and it creates better products and innovation for the consumers that they will eventually adopt. And the best product and service should win out. So I don't think it's a head-to-head, what are they doing approach to marketing or product development. I think it's more, again, what are the problems that we as a company or any company should be solving for, and then how do we develop the best solution for those things, and those things will win out. So that's where the concern is. It's more of a proactive competition versus a reactive defensive approach amongst the companies. Yeah.
My grandmother, who substitute teaches, that's her excuse to get out the house. Always talking about how the generation's coming, you can't carry a conversation, you can't solve their own problem. All this product innovation that you all are doing, does that ever play in the back of your mind? Do you ever think that, all right, we give them this excuse with the Google Glass to keep their head up, but it's really not solving it?
Yeah, so the question is technology ruining social interactions? These are weighty questions up here. I don't. There are a lot of good things about technology, and there are a lot of bad things. I think it's kind of a yin and the yang. I think how to use. I think I'm going to default a little bit to just Google Glass. One of the things it's trying to solve is the need to look down and interact with the screen versus live your life and have the screen be part of it and have the information be part of it. That is an attempt to try and solve the problem of people inherently don't want to totally disconnect from the world for the most part, unless you're in an uncomfortable conversation. Oh, I have a call. But people don't necessarily want to do that all the time. Yes, I think there is just anecdotally, some social things that maybe people, kids nowadays, they have a little bit more difficult. It's actually, when you look at Instagram, it's funny that so my girls aren't that old yet, but depending how popular you were in high school or middle school, in the old days, you used to find out about the sleepover or the party that you weren't invited to on Monday. Nowadays, through Instagram, all these kids find out of the party as it's going on. And isn't that like a horrible thing for a 13-year-old to realize I wasn't invited and look how much fun they're having, And that is what kids, teenagers are dealing with today. I don't think we're ever going to go back. I think it can change and that experience can be learned from. But I don't have a solution to deal with that problem. The guy was very proud. That was his kid. He put it up there. No. The answer is no. You can look it up. It's a baby thinks a magazine is an iPad. Is that it? Okay. Again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.